The sky burned orange and red as the coalition ships jumped away. Lieutenant Park stood on the broken roof of the communication tower and watched them disappear one by one. Each flash of light was another ship leaving. Each flash was another betrayal. She counted 12 flashes, 12 ships. The entire defense fleet was gone. Below her, the colony of New Haven stretched out in organized rows of buildings and farms. 12,000 people lived here. Families, children, old people who had come to this world hopping to spend their final years in peace. Workers who had built everything from nothing. And now they were alone. Lieutenant, Corporal climbed up the ladder and joined her on the roof. His face was pale, his hands were shaking. The coalition fleet, they really left, they just left us here. Did not answer. She kept her eyes on the sky where new shapes were appearing, dark shapes, enemy shapes. The Dominion warships moved slowly into position above the planet. There were at least 20 of them. "What do we do?" asked. His voice cracked like a young boy's voice, even though he was 25 years old. Finally looked at him. Her eyes were hard, her jaw was tight. "We survive." She climbed down the ladder and walked through the streets of New Haven. People were running everywhere. Some were crying. Some were screaming. Some just stood still, too shocked to move. They had trusted the coalition. They had believed the promises of protection. And now those promises meant nothing. The Dominion was a group of alien species who believed in power above all else. They conquered worlds. They enslaved populations. They showed no mercy. Everyone in the galaxy knew what happened to people who fell under Dominion control. Found Sergeant Han organizing the remaining soldiers near the town center. Was older than her by 10 years. His hair was going gray at the sides. His face was covered with old scars from battles he never talked about. He had been a soldier for most of his life. "How many do we have?" asked. 37 combat-ready soldiers, replied. "Another 50 civilians who know how to shoot, maybe 200 more who could learn fast. Weapons. Enough rifles for everyone who can fight. Ammunition for maybe 3 days of heavy combat. Some explosives, not much else." Nodded slowly. It was not enough. It was not even close to enough, but it was what they had. A message came through on all communication channels. The Dominion commander's voice filled every speaker in the colony. It was a cold voice, a voice that expected obedience. "Human colony designated New Haven. You have been abandoned by your coalition protectors. Your world now belongs to the Dominion. You have 3 days to surrender all weapons, all resources, and all personnel. Resistance will result in complete destruction. This is your only warning." The message ended. Silence fell over the town center. People looked at each other with fear in their eyes. 3 days. They had 3 days before the killing began. An old man stepped forward from the crowd. His name was Grandfather, and he had been one of the first colonists on this world. "We should surrender," he said quietly. "Fighting will only make things worse. At least if we surrender, some of us might live." Some people nodded. Others shook their heads. Arguments broke out. Voices rose in anger and fear. "Quiet's voice cut through the noise. Everyone turned to look at her. "Surrendering to the Dominion is not survival. It is slow death. They will take our children for their labor camps. They will take our young people for their breeding programs. They will work us until we die and then replace us with more slaves from other worlds. I have seen what they do to conquered people. I will not let that happen here." "But we cannot fight them," a woman called out. "They have warships, they have thousands of soldiers. What can we do against that?" Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already accepted death and decided to make it meaningful. "The Dominion expects us to surrender. They expect us to be weak. They do not understand what humans are capable of when we have nothing left to lose." She turned to, "Find Doctor, bring her to the old bunker beneath the original colony site, and spread the word to everyone who wants to fight. We meet in 1 hour." saluted and moved away quickly. He had served with for 3 years. He had seen her make impossible things happen. If anyone could find a way through this darkness, it was her. The bunker was old. It had been built by the first colonists before the coalition came to help with the settlement. Most people had forgotten it existed, but remembered every tunnel, every room, every hidden passage. She had studied the colony's history carefully. She believed in knowing everything about the ground she stood on. Doctor arrived 20 minutes later. She was a small woman with glasses and messy hair. Her hands were covered with grease and small burns from her work in the engineering bay. She looked confused and scared, like everyone else. "Lieutenant Park, why am I here? What is this place?" Led her deeper into the bunker. The lights flickered as old power systems struggled to stay alive. The coalition made us disconnect all direct communication with Earth when we joined their protection agreement. They said it was for security reasons. They said it was necessary for integration. Yes, I remember. All colonies had to do the same thing. But the original colonists did not actually destroy the communication system. They just hid it, stopped in front of a wall covered with old equipment. They buried it down here. They did not trust the coalition completely. They wanted a backup plan. His eyes went wide as she understood. You want me to contact Earth directly, but even if I can make it work, Earth is so far away. It would take their fleet weeks to reach us, maybe longer. Then we hold for weeks, or longer, put her hand on shoulder. Can you do it? Can you make this system work again? Looked at the ancient equipment. She looked at the dust and the rust and the broken wires. She looked at the impossible task in front of her. Then she took a deep breath and nodded. I can try, but I need time, a lot of time. How much? At least a full day, maybe more. His jaw tightened. A full day, 24 hours, with Dominion forces already in orbit and ground troops probably preparing to land at any moment. It seemed impossible. But impossible was just a word. Humans had been doing impossible things since they first looked up at the stars and decided to reach them. You will have your day, said. I promise you that. She left in the bunker and returned to the surface. The sky was darker now. Dominion were beginning to descend through the clouds. The invasion was starting early. The enemy was not even going to wait 3 days. Gathered her soldiers. 37 faces looked back at her. Young faces, scared faces, but also determined faces. They were human. They were descendants of a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have destroyed them 100 times over. The coalition thinks we are weak, said. The Dominion thinks we will break easily. Today we show them the truth. Today we show them what humans do when our backs are against the wall. We fight. We bleed. We die if we must. But we never ever give up. Not while one of us is still breathing. She raised her rifle. For Earth, for our families, for each other. 37 voices answered as one. For Earth. The battle for New Haven had begun. We were left for dead on a dying planet, until Earth's fury broke through the stars. Part 2, The Forgotten Signal. The first Dominion landed at the edge of the colony just after sunset, watched it through her scope from a hidden position on top of the water tower. The enemy soldiers marched out in perfect formation. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Each arm held a weapon. Their eyes glowed faint yellow in the darkness. There were 50 of them in the first group. More were landing every few minutes. Soon there would be hundreds, then thousands. Sergeant Han spoke quietly into her radio. Status report. His voice came back calm and steady. Position set. Civilians evacuated to the inner zone. Traps are ready. We are waiting for your order. Watched the enemy soldiers begin to move toward the colony. They walked slowly, confidently. They expected no real resistance. They expected frightened humans to come out with their hands raised, begging for mercy. They were wrong. All units said, Hold fire until they reach the market square. Let them come deep into our territory. We want them comfortable. We want them to think this will be easy." The soldiers acknowledged her order. Then there was silence, the kind of silence that comes before violence. Thought about Doctor working alone in the bunker below. Every minute of fighting bought her more time. Every enemy soldier they killed was one less soldier who might find the bunker. Everything depended on that signal reaching Earth. The Dominion troops entered the market square. They spread out, checking buildings, looking for signs of resistance. One of them made a sound that might have been laughter. They were enjoying this. They thought it was going to be simple. Now said. The night exploded. Bombs that had been buried beneath the square went off in a chain reaction. Buildings rigged with explosives collapsed onto the enemy soldiers. Gunfire erupted from every direction as humans opened fire from windows, rooftops, and hidden tunnels. The first wave of Dominion troops was destroyed in less than 2 minutes. But more were coming, always more. Private Song was only 19 years old. She had joined the Colony Defense Force because she wanted to protect people. She had never killed anyone before today. Now she had lost count of how many enemies she had shot. She was positioned in a narrow corridor between two buildings. Her job was to hold this passage and prevent the enemy from reaching the residential area where the children and elderly were hiding. It was supposed to be a backup position. No one expected the enemy to actually reach this far. But the enemy kept coming, waves of them, and one by one the soldiers around fell, shot, burned, killed. Now she was alone. Her rifle was malfunctioning. It fired sometimes and jammed other times. She had no way to fix it. She had no backup. She had no support. A group of Dominion soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor. They saw her. They raised their weapons. Fired first. Her rifle worked this time. One enemy fell. She fired again. Jammed. She hit the rifle with her hand and pulled the trigger. Another enemy fell. Jammed again. She kept hitting the weapon, kept firing, kept fighting. For 40 minutes she held that corridor alone. 40 minutes of terror and pain and determination. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found her sitting against the wall, covered in blood and burns, still holding her broken rifle, still alive. 7 enemy bodies lay in front of her. "Private Song," the squad leader said in amazement, "how did you?" Looked up at him with exhausted eyes. "They wanted to get to the children. I did not let them." In another part of the colony, Medic was doing his own impossible work. He was not a fighter. He had never held a weapon in his life. His job was to save lives, not take them. But tonight, the line between those two things had disappeared. He ran through burning streets, dragging wounded soldiers to safety. He operated on people with no proper equipment, no clean room, no assistance. He used kitchen knives when surgical tools ran out. He used when bandages were gone. He kept people alive through pure stubbornness and refusal to let death win. A building collapsed nearby. Flames shot into the sky, heard screaming from inside the rubble. "Someone is trapped," a civilian woman said, "but the fire is too strong. We cannot reach them." Did not think. He grabbed a wet blanket, wrapped it around himself, and ran into the flames. The heat was terrible. His skin burned. His lungs filled with smoke. But he kept moving, following the sound of the screams. He found a young soldier trapped under a fallen beam. The boy was maybe 17 years old. His legs were crushed. He was going to die if he stayed here. Lifted the beam. It was impossibly heavy. His muscles screamed in protest. His burned hands slipped on the hot metal, but he lifted it anyway. He dragged the boy out. He carried him through the fire, through the smoke, through the hell that the colony had become. When he finally collapsed outside, people rushed to help him. His clothes were burned. His skin was covered with blisters, but he was alive, and so was the boy he had saved. "How many is that tonight?" someone asked. Coughed smoke from his lungs. "I stopped counting after 20. deep below the surface, worked in desperate silence. The old communication equipment was a mess of broken circuits and corroded wires. It had not been used in decades. Getting it to function again was like trying to bring a dead thing back to life. Her fingers bled from working with sharp metal edges. Her eyes burned from staring at tiny components for hours. She had not eaten. She had not slept. She had barely stopped to breathe. Every few minutes the bunker shook from explosions above. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Sometimes she heard distant screaming. Sometimes she heard gunfire. Sometimes she heard nothing at all, which was somehow worse. She thought about the people fighting above her. She thought about Lieutenant Park and Sergeant Han and all the soldiers who were dying to give her time. She thought about the children hiding in shelters, trusting the adults to protect them. She could not fail, she would not fail. Hour after hour she worked. She rebuilt circuits. She rewired systems. She solved problems that seemed unsolvable. She refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. And finally, after 18 hours of continuous work, the old communication beacon hummed to life. Stared at it in disbelief. The green light blinked steadily. The system was working. The connection to Earth was established. She sat down at the terminal and began typing with shaking hands. Emergency transmission. Colony New Haven on 7. Coalition forces have abandoned us. Dominion invasion in progress. 12,000 civilian lives at risk. We are holding position but cannot last much longer, requesting immediate assistance. Please respond. Please come. We are still alive. We are still fighting. Please do not forget us. She sent the message. Then she sent it again, and again, and again, over and over, pushing the signal toward Earth with all the power the old system could produce. The message shot across the void of space at the speed of light. It passed stars and planets and empty darkness. It traveled distances that the human mind could barely understand. It carried the hope of 12,000 people who refused to die quietly. Now there was nothing to do but wait and fight and hope that Earth was listening. Stood up from the terminal and picked up a weapon that had been left in the bunker. She had never fired a gun before. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but she was also human, and humans adapted. Humans learned. Humans did whatever was necessary to survive. She climbed the stairs toward the surface, toward the battle, toward her people. The signal had been sent. Now she would stand with the others and face whatever came next. Above ground, Lieutenant Park received the news through her radio. The beacon was working. The message had been sent. She smiled through the blood and dirt on her face. They had done the impossible. Now they just had to stay alive long enough for Earth to answer. All units, she broadcast to her surviving soldiers. The signal is sent. Earth knows we are here. Now we hold until help comes. No matter what it takes, no matter how long, we hold. The battle continued. The night grew darker, but somewhere across the galaxy a message was traveling toward home, and hope, however small, was still alive. We were left for dead on a dying planet, until Earth's fury broke through the stars. Part 3, Earth Remembers. Admiral was sitting in a boring meeting when everything changed. The meeting was about money. It was always about money. How much the fleet could spend. How many ships could be built. How many soldiers could be trained. The coalition representatives sat across from her, explaining in their patient, superior voices why humanity needed to accept another budget cut. "You must understand, Admiral," the coalition ambassador said. His name was something unpronounceable. His species had blue scales and no nose. Humanity is still a provisional member. Full military funding is reserved for established species, perhaps in another few decades. Had heard this speech 100 times. She had learned to smile and nod and pretend it did not make her blood boil. Humanity had been a provisional member for 40 years. They had fought in coalition wars. They had died protecting coalition worlds. and still they were treated like children who needed to wait their turn. The door to the meeting room burst open. A young officer ran in, his face white with shock. "Admiral, emergency transmission from the outer colonies." Stood immediately. "What kind of emergency?" The officer handed her a tablet. She read the message on the screen. She read it again, then a third time to make sure she was not dreaming. Colony New Haven. 7. Coalition forces abandoned. Dominion invasion. 12,000 civilians requesting assistance. When did this happen? Her voice was ice cold. "The signal is 12 hours old, Admiral. It took that long to reach us. The colony. They have been fighting for at least half a day already." The coalition ambassador rose from his seat. His scales changed color slightly, which meant he was nervous. "Admiral, this is a terrible tragedy, but you must understand the strategic situation. 7 was deemed indefensible. The Dominion forces were too strong. Our fleet commanders made the difficult but necessary choice to abandon 12,000 people." Did not look at him. She was still staring at the message. "To run away and let civilians die. To preserve our military assets for more important battles. The coalition cannot afford to lose ships defending every small colony. Sometimes sacrifices must be made." Finally looked at him. Something in her eyes made him step backward. "Those are not coalition citizens on 7. Those are humans, my people, my responsibility. Admiral, any unilateral military action would be a serious violation of coalition treaty. You do not have the authority to." "Get out." The ambassador blinked his strange eyes. "I beg your pardon." "Get out of my headquarters. Get out of my sight. Your coalition made its choice when it abandoned our colony. Now I will make mine. The Council will not accept this. There will be consequences, sanctions. Your species will be expelled from." "I said get out." The ambassador and his assistants fled the room, turned to her officers. They were all watching her, waiting to see what she would do. They knew what the coalition treaty said. They knew the punishment for breaking it. But they also knew that somewhere across the galaxy, humans were dying alone. "Contact every ship captain in the fleet," ordered. "Tell them to prepare for immediate deployment, full combat readiness. We leave in 6 hours." "Admiral," one of her officers said quietly, "if we do this, there may be no going back. The coalition could cut us off completely. We could lose everything we have built." Thought about that. She thought about the years of careful diplomacy. She thought about all the compromises and humiliations humanity had endured to gain a place in the galactic community. She thought about what they would lose if they the coalition openly. Then she thought about 12,000 people fighting for their lives against an enemy that showed no mercy. She thought about children hiding in shelters, waiting for help that might never come. She thought about Lieutenant Park and everyone else who had sent that desperate message into the void. "Some things matter more than treaties," said. "Some things matter more than politics. If we do not go to save our own people, then what kind of species are we? What is the point of all our ships and soldiers if we will not use them when it counts?" She looked around the room at each of her officers. "I am not ordering anyone to come. This mission may end our careers, it may end our lives, but I am going. Who is with me?" Every officer in the room stepped forward. Within 2 hours, the word had spread through the entire fleet. Admiral was assembling a rescue force. She was going to 7. She was going to fight the Dominion. She was going to bring their people home. Volunteers came from everywhere. Ship captains who canceled their leave. Soldiers who left their families without a goodbye. Engineers who worked without sleep to prepare the ships for immediate launch. Everyone who heard the story wanted to help. Watched the fleet come together with pride in her heart. 27 warships, 15,000 Marines. It was not the largest fleet in the galaxy. It was not the most powerful, but it was enough. It had to be enough. She sat down in her command chair on the bridge of her flagship, the Soul's Pride. Around her, Officers moved quickly and efficiently, preparing for the jump to faster-than-light speed. The stars outside the window seemed to wait for her decision. "Open a channel," said. "All frequencies, I want everyone to hear this." "Channel open, Admiral." Took a deep breath. Then she spoke, and her words traveled across the galaxy on every communication system that could receive them. "To the Dominion forces at 7, you have attacked Earth's children. You have invaded a world where our people live. You have surrounded our colony and demanded their surrender. This message is your only warning. You have 3 hours from the time this signal reaches you. Withdraw your forces completely. Leave our people in peace. If you do not, then know this: we are coming, and we will destroy everything you send against us." She paused, letting those words sink in. "To the Coalition, you abandoned our people. You broke your promise of protection. You decided that 12,000 human lives were not worth fighting for. Watch closely now. Watch what happens when you forget that humans protect their own. We do not leave our people behind. We do not surrender our families to enemies. We come for them, always, no matter how far, no matter how dangerous. This is what it means to be human." She ended the transmission. Her officers stared at her with a mixture of fear and admiration. She had just declared war on the Dominion. She had just openly the Coalition. There was no turning back now. "Navigation," said calmly. "Set course for 7, maximum speed." "Course set, Admiral." "All ships prepare for jump." The fleet powered up its engines. 27 ships, 15,000 soldiers, one species that had been pushed too far. "Jump." The stars stretched into lines of light. The fleet vanished from Earth's orbit and shot across the galaxy toward a distant world where their brothers and sisters were still fighting, still bleeding, still hopping. On 7, Lieutenant Park had no way of knowing that help was on the way. She was too busy fighting to stay alive, too focused on protecting the people who depended on her. But somewhere in her heart, in that place where hope lives even in the darkest moments, she believed that Earth would not forget them. She was right. Earth remembered. Earth answered. And Earth was coming with all the fury that a species could bring when their children were in danger. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never abandon a human. Because no matter what you do to them, no matter how alone they seem, their family always comes. Always. We were left for dead on a dying planet, until Earth's fury broke through the stars. Part 4, The Fury Arrives. Lieutenant Park could barely stand. She had not slept in 3 days. Plasma burns covered her left arm and part of her face. Her uniform was more blood than cloth, but she was still alive, and as long as she was alive, she would keep fighting. The survivors had retreated to the central bunker. It was their last position. There was nowhere else to go. The colony above them was mostly destroyed. The beautiful farms and homes they had built were now burned ruins, but the bunker was strong. It had been built to survive anything, and inside it 2,000 civilians huddled together, waiting for the end. Of the 37 soldiers who had started this fight, only 11 remained. Sergeant Han had lost his right eye in an explosion. He wore a bloody bandage over the empty socket, but he refused to stop fighting. Private Song could not walk anymore. Her legs had been badly injured, but she sat in a corner with her rifle, ready to shoot any enemy that came through the door. Medic had no more medical supplies. He had saved as many lives as he could. Now he held a weapon like everyone else. Doctor sat near the communication equipment, still sending their signal toward Earth, again and again, over and over. She did not know if anyone was listening. She did not know if help was coming, but she refused to stop trying. The Dominion commander's voice came through the speakers. He sounded impatient now, annoyed. The humans had lasted much longer than expected. They had killed far more Dominion soldiers than anyone thought possible. What was supposed to be a quick conquest had become a bloody, expensive battle. Human survivors, this is your final opportunity. Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to live. Continue resisting, and I will order my forces to destroy the bunker with everyone inside. You have 1 hour to decide. There will be no more warnings." Looked around at the faces of her soldiers. They were exhausted. They were injured. They were dying, but not one of them showed any sign of wanting to surrender. "What do you say?" she asked them. "Should we give up?" Laughed, which made blood leak from under his bandage. "Give up? After everything we have been through? Never." Raised her broken rifle with shaking hands. "They have to come get us. I still have bullets left." Nodded quietly. He had no words left, but his answer was clear in his eyes. Stood up from her communication post. "The signal is still going out. Earth knows we are here. Even if we die today, they will know that we did not surrender. They will know that we fought to the last." Felt tears burn in her eyes, not tears of sadness, tears of pride. These people, her people, were magnificent. They had every reason to give up. They had nothing left but pain and exhaustion and the certainty of death. But they chose to stand anyway. They chose to fight anyway. She keyed her radio to respond to the Dominion commander. Her voice was calm and steady despite everything. "No." There was a pause. Then the commander spoke again, confused. "No, you refuse. You would die for nothing. Your coalition has abandoned you. No help is coming. You are alone." Smiled. It hurt to smile with the burns on her face, but she did it anyway. "We are not coalition. We are human, and you clearly do not understand what that means." She ended the transmission. Then she turned to her soldiers. "Everyone to your positions. They will attack soon. We hold as long as we can. And when we can hold no longer, we make them pay for every step, every inch, every breath." The soldiers moved to their places. The civilians prayed or cried or sat in silence. The bunker waited. Outside, the Dominion forces began their final assault. Thousands of soldiers surrounded the bunker. Heavy weapons aimed at the reinforced doors. It was only a matter of time now. Then something strange happened. The Dominion warships in orbit went silent. Their constant communication with the ground forces stopped. The soldiers outside the bunker paused, looking up at the sky with confusion. Watched through a cracked camera feed as bright flashes appeared in the upper atmosphere. Not weapon fire, something else. Something coming down from space very fast. "What is that?" asked, limping to her side. "I do not know." More flashes, then explosions far above. Explosions that were not hitting the planet. Explosions in space. Ship explosions. Suddenly screamed from her communication post. Not a scream of fear, a scream of joy. "I am receiving a signal, a human signal. Earth fleet identification codes. They are here. Earth is here." The bunker erupted in chaos. People were crying, laughing, holding each other. The impossible had happened. Help had come. In orbit, Admiral watched the Dominion fleet burn. Her ships had arrived without warning, jumping out of faster-than-light speed directly into combat positions. The Dominion commanders had no time to prepare, no time to organize. They were caught completely by surprise. The battle was brutal but short. Earth's warships fought with a fury that shocked even experienced soldiers. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not hesitate when outnumbered. They attacked with everything they had, and they did not stop until every enemy ship was destroyed. All Dominion vessels eliminated. Admiral, her weapons officer, reported. "The space above 7 is clear." Allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. Then she focused on the next task. "Launch all. I want Marines on the ground in 10 minutes. Find our people and bring them out safely." "Yes, Admiral." They fell from the sky like rain, hundreds of them carrying thousands of human soldiers in full combat armor. The Dominion ground forces, cut off from their fleet and their commanders, tried to resist, but they were already broken. Their confidence was gone. Their reinforcements were never coming, and the humans descending from the sky were fresh, well-equipped, and very, very angry. Captain Bay led the first squad to reach the central bunker. He was a big man with gentle eyes and hands that could crush rocks. He had volunteered for this mission the moment he heard about it. His little sister lived on 7. He had not heard from her since the invasion began. The bunker doors were heavily damaged. His engineers had to cut through layers of reinforced metal to get inside. When the doors finally opened, stepped through with his weapon ready, not knowing what he would find. He found heroes. 11 soldiers, barely alive, still standing at their posts with weapons raised. 2,000 civilians, some injured, some starving, but all alive. A communications officer who was still transmitting even though help had already arrived. A medic who had saved more lives than anyone could count. And at the center of it all, a young lieutenant with burns on her face and fire in her eyes, refusing to stand down until she knew for certain that the newcomers were friends. "Identification," she demanded, pointing her damaged rifle at his chest. Slowly reached up and removed his helmet. He showed her the Earth flag patch on his shoulder. "Captain Bay, Earth Marine Corps. Admiral sent us. We came as soon as we could." Stared at him. She stared at the flag. She stared at the other Marines pouring into the bunker behind him. Earth soldiers, human soldiers, help that she had almost stopped believing would ever come. Her rifle lowered slowly. Her legs, which had kept her standing through 3 days of hell, finally gave out. She collapsed but caught her before she hit the ground. "Lieutenant," he said softly, supporting her weight easily. "It is over. You held the line, you kept everyone alive. Earth got your message, we came for you." Looked up at him with exhausted eyes. For the first time since the coalition fleet had abandoned them, she allowed herself to believe that they might actually survive this. "Took you long enough," she whispered. Then she closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. She had earned her rest. She had done the impossible. She had held the line until Earth came. And Earth had come with fury and fire and a promise that would echo across the galaxy. Never again. Never again would humans be abandoned. Never again would their colonies be sacrificed. Never again would anyone forget what happened when you threatened Earth's children. The rescue of New Haven was complete, but the consequences of this day would change the galaxy forever. We were left for dead on a dying planet, until Earth's fury broke through the stars. Part 5, A Galaxy Reminded. 3 weeks after the Battle of 7, Admiral stood before the Coalition Council. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. Some of them had scales, some had feathers, some had no solid form at all. They all looked at the small human woman standing alone in the center of the room. She was not alone, of course. Behind her in the observer section sat the survivors of New Haven. Lieutenant Park was there, her burns healing but still visible. Sergeant Han wore an eye patch that had become a symbol of human defiance across the galaxy. Private Song sat in a wheelchair, her legs slowly recovering. Medic stood quietly, uncomfortable with the attention. Doctor had her tablet, still making notes, still working even now. The Coalition High Speaker, a tall creature with silver skin and too many joints, rose to address the chamber. "Admiral, you stand accused of violating Coalition Treaty. You deployed military forces without authorization. You engaged an enemy power without council approval. You have endangered the delicate peace that this coalition has maintained for centuries." Nodded calmly, "I understand the charges." "And what do you have to say in your defense?" Looked around the chamber. She looked at every face, every set of eyes, every alien being that had been content to let 12,000 humans die for political convenience. "You left our people to die," she said simply. "Your fleet commanders ran away. Your government decided that our colony was not worth defending. You broke every promise you made to us when we joined your coalition." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species looked embarrassed, others looked angry, a few looked afraid. "We trusted you," continued. "For 40 years humanity has followed your rules. We have fought in your wars. We have died protecting your worlds. We have accepted being treated as lesser members, as provisional citizens, as guests in your galaxy. And when we needed you most, you abandoned us." The High Speaker raised a hand for silence. The strategic situation was complex. The Dominion forces were overwhelming. Our commanders made a difficult decision to preserve our military strength For what? Interrupted. For more important battles, more valuable worlds. What makes a world valuable enough to defend? What makes lives worth saving? Is it resources, power, political influence? Because I can tell you what makes human lives valuable to us. They are human. That is all. That is enough. That will always be enough. She stepped forward, and despite her small size, every being in the chamber seemed to lean back. "You think we are weak. You think we are primitive. You look at our short lives and our fragile bodies and you see nothing threatening. But let me tell you what I see when I look at humanity. I see a species that crawled out of caves and reached the stars. I see a species that has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed any other people. I see a species that never stops fighting, never stops hopping, never stops reaching for something greater than themselves." She pointed at the survivors behind her. "Look at them. Look at what they did. 37 soldiers held off an army. Civilians became warriors. An engineer restored a communication system that was decades old. A medic saved lives with kitchen knives, and a 19-year-old girl held a corridor alone for 40 minutes because she refused to let enemies reach the children she was protecting." Her voice rose with power and pride. "That is what humans are. That is what you forgot. That is what the Dominion learned too late. And that is what this entire galaxy will remember after today." The chamber was completely silent. Even the High Speaker seemed unable to speak. The Coalition ambassador who had tried to stop before the rescue stood up from his seat. "Admiral, surely you understand that we cannot allow such violations of treaty to go unpunished. There must be consequences. There must be." "There will be consequences," agreed, "but not for us." She pulled out a tablet and held it up. "This is a formal declaration. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Coalition. We will no longer accept provisional membership. We will no longer follow your rules or wait for your approval. We will protect our own people on our own terms without asking permission from anyone." Gasps filled the chamber. Leaving the Coalition was unprecedented. No species had ever done it voluntarily. The political implications were enormous. "You cannot survive alone," the ambassador protested. "The Dominion will attack you. Other powers will see you as vulnerable, without Coalition protection." "Protection?" laughed, and the sound was cold. "What protection? You ran away from one Dominion fleet. We destroyed it. If that is Coalition protection, then we do not need it." She looked around the chamber one final time. "But let me be clear about something. We are not your enemies. We do not want war with the Coalition or anyone else. We simply want to live free, to protect our families, to build our future without asking permission from species who see us as lesser beings." Her voice softened slightly. "If you ever need our help, truly need it, we will answer, because that is who we are. We do not abandon people, even people who abandoned us, but we will never again allow our fates to be decided by those who do not value our lives." She turned and walked toward the exit, followed by the survivors of New Haven. The entire chamber watched them go in stunned silence. At the door, Park paused and looked back. She found the Coalition ambassador's eyes. "You wanted to know what happens when you leave humans to die," she said quietly. "Now you know. We fight, we survive, and we remember. We always remember." Then she was gone. 6 months later, the colony on Seven had been rebuilt. New buildings rose from the ruins. New farms grew where fire had burned. A memorial stood in the center of the town, bearing the names of everyone who had fallen during the invasion. Park, now promoted to captain, visited the memorial every morning. She would stand before the stone and read the names silently. 26 soldiers, 112 civilians, each one a hero, each one remembered. Admiral came to visit 1 year after the battle. She walked through the new colony, seeing the progress that had been made. Children played in streets that had once been battlefields. Families sat together in homes that had been rebuilt with love and determination. She found at the memorial, as expected, Captain Park. Saluted, "Admiral, thank you for coming." Stood beside her and looked at the names on the stone. "I heard the coalition offered us full membership again, a seat on the council, equal status with all other species." Nodded, "I heard that too. Do you think we should accept?" Was silent for a long moment. She thought about the coalition ships jumping away, abandoning them. She thought about the 3 days of fighting. She thought about the friends she had lost and the price they had paid. "No," she said finally. "We do not need their acceptance. We do not need their approval. We proved what we are capable of without them. That is enough." Smiled, "That is exactly what I told them." They stood together in comfortable silence, two soldiers who had changed the galaxy simply by refusing to give up. At the base of the memorial, carved into the stone, was a simple message that had been sent across every human colony, every ship, every station. It was a promise and a warning, a declaration of who humans were and who they would always be. We were left for dead. We held the line. Earth came. And across the galaxy, species who had never thought much about humans began to pay attention. They watched the small, fragile creatures who had an empire. They heard the stories of impossible courage and unbreakable determination. They learned a lesson that would never be forgotten. Never abandon a human. Never threaten their families. Never assume they are weak because they are small or short-lived or emotional. Because no matter how alone they seem, no matter how hopeless their situation appears, help is coming. Their species remembers. Their species comes for them. Earth always comes. And when Earth arrives, it brings with it all the fury, all the love, all the unstoppable determination of a species that has never learned how to give up. The galaxy had been reminded what it means to be human. They would not forget again.